Zipper rolls out to the right, pitches off to Taylor, and Taylor's to the 20, down to the 15, down to the 10, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Touchdown, Billy Taylor! Touchdown, Billy Taylor! Billy Taylor scored a touchdown from 21 yards out. The crowd goes berserk. It was November 22nd, 1969. That they came to Barry, Michigan, all dressed in maize and blue. The words were said, the prayers were read, and everybody cried. But when they closed the coffin, there was someone else inside. Oh, they came to Barry, Michigan, but Michigan wasn't dead. And when the game was over, it was someone else instead. 11 Michigan Wolverines put on the gloves of gray, and as the organ played the victors, they laid Woody Hayes away. Under center is Wangler at the 45. He goes back. He's looking for a receiver. He throws downfield to Carter. Who's got it better than us? Nobody!
Welcome to the Michigan Man Podcast on Wolverine Sports Radio, a member of the V Sporto Network, and in partnership with SB Nation's Maize and Brew, for Wolverine fans from coast to coast. Go Blue, and welcome back to the show. I'm your host, Mike Fitzpatrick. Our guest on this week's Game Day show is the angel of the big house, beat writer Angelique Chengelis from the Detroit News. First, my view from Section 17 to get us started. All in all, I was happy with the way we performed in the opener. There is plenty for Josh Gaddis to work on and clean up this week, but I think just about every OC in college football can say the same thing after the first game. I think this offense will get better over the next few weeks in every way. Don Brown's defense was pretty darn good too. They gave up 2 short field scores in the first half and then a garbage time 6 with time running out. Now there might be some drop off this year, it's hard to tell, but my first impression is we're going to be just fine on the defensive side. 3 players overall jumped out to me in the opener. Zach Charbonnet, he has that combination of speed and size we have not seen around here in a long time. Excited about him, and his pass protection was outstanding too. Ambry Thomas. Now I was shocked to see him suited up and ready to go, but go he did, and this kid is big time. And for those of you who are worried about the corners, don't be. I think if we stay healthy back there, we're much better off than we all thought in the preseason. Now the third player is Will Hart. This kid is a huge weapon. I'm not sure I've seen a better Michigan punter when it comes to dropping the ball deep and making an offense go long field. Now, there may have been some, I just can't remember anyone who does it consistently like Will Hart does. So don't underestimate what he could mean to us later this year when we're in a tight game or weather is a factor. Now, my guest today says she thought Michigan performed well in just about every phase of the game Saturday night. She thinks there's plenty of work to be done, but the positives far outweighed any hiccups we saw in that opener. Beat writer Angelique Chengelis from the Detroit News is up next here on the Michigan Man in partnership with SB Nation's Maize and Brew. Here with us on our Game Day segment to talk about the big home opener with Middle Tennessee State is Angelique Chengelis from the Detroit News for the first time this year. Great to have you back with us, Angelique.
Mike, it's great to talk to you. It's not Ohio State week, so this is kind of fun. Talking to you about the opener and not the last game.
Absolutely it is, and we have waited so long to talk about this team since the bowl game. Michigan fans have been waiting to see the new offense in action since Josh Gaddis was hired. That's all we've heard about. And to say the least, what we saw on Saturday night, Angelique, was very interesting, wasn't it?
It really was very interesting, Mike. I mean, I think it's the best way to put it. And, I think that's the one thing about getting ready for a season. And in this day and age with a 24/7 news cycle, I'm guilty of it because I have to be now, but we're just pumping out stories constantly. Really since Josh Gaddis was hired, and talking to people who worked with him and who's going to be doing, how can he do this? Can he achieve this quickly at Michigan? And it's just over and over and over again. And I think people get that in their heads and they expect it to be perfect. And the moment it's debuted, and it wasn't perfect, but there were a lot of highlights and a lot of reasons to think it's going to be an improvement. So, but I know it wasn't perfect, and that's what people were looking for. They wanted to see, I think they wanted to see a blowout, and it wasn't there yet. But there were some key people missing, some players out, and but I think it was, although it was a good start.
No, I think so too, and we have to expect there are going to be some hiccups. Not only is it the first game of the season, you have a new offense, a lot of new and young players getting their first action. Again, it's a brand new offense. We saw things like ball handling issues. You're going to see that. Drop passes, you see that no matter what kind of offense you're running in the first or second games. There were blown routes. You could tell Shea was throwing to places where receivers were going a different way. But in my mind, everything we at least saw go wrong on Saturday night is very fixable.
Very fixable. And I'm sure, after a whole camp, and you hear this all the time, they get sick of playing each other and they need something tangible to work on. And this is the kind of game that gives them a lot of things to work on. That's why I think it's ideal when Michigan would play Notre Dame way back. They like to have a game before that game. And this was a perfect setup for them, I thought, having Middle Tennessee State come in. They were undersized team, but very scrappy, I thought, and took advantage of some turnovers, obviously, but gave them a good test and gave them some ideas of what needs to be worked on. And you pointed them out. And we haven't even talked about the defense because there's definitely things the defense needs to work on. But I think that I don't grade. I don't go do the grade thing, but I think you give this team a solid B minus C plus, and I think that's fair, and it just gives you so much more room to grow. And there's so many examples of areas where they need to do that, but by saying that, I don't mean that they're in a deep hole. They're just, they've got things they have to polish and fix.
Well, let's talk about the offense and some of the things that we saw on Saturday night, Angelique. Starting with Shea Patterson, your thoughts on his play?
Well, I thought, what a terrible way to start a game. It sort of reminded me of Wilton Spate when he threw that interception his first play, and obviously Shea's a returning starter, and it was something that clearly affected him, Mike, because he talked about it constantly after the game. I mean, it's on him. He's got to protect the ball, and it definitely hit him, and I think that's a good thing. He's not the kind of guy who dwells and it's going to mess with his psyche. It's something that's going to motivate him. At least my sense of Shea, haven't gotten to know him over the past year, so I think that hurt him. But I think it's hard to roll your eyes and say it was a bad game for him. He had 203 yards and 3 touchdowns, and he made some nice plays. And apparently he had some kind of physical issue, Harbaugh said. And at halftime, they were checking on him and making sure that he was okay. And, I don't think we should overlook that. I think that there was probably some small issue that they do have to deal with in terms of his physical well-being. But, I thought he played well, and he was missing one of his top targets. Donovan Peoples-Jones was out, put in a boot, but I think people have been wanting to see some of these other receivers, and seeing Patrick Black was certainly a positive in the first half. But to speak to Shea, I thought he played well. I did, and I know that there are things he wants back and things that need to be fixed, but I thought he looked fine.
Well, Jim told us before the season started at Big Ten Media Days we were going to see Dylan McCaffrey, or at least he wanted to use him every week if he could. Although seeing him and Shea on the field at the same time, that was a bit clunky to say the least, wasn't it?
Yeah, clunky is a great word to describe that, Mike. I wish I had thought of that last night when I was writing. I should have called you. I think it was. It was kind of perplexing, and it felt forced to me, like, you don't need to do this. And you want to bring Dylan McCaffrey and bring him in and let him do what they want him to do, which, he ran the ball pretty well. He had a turnover as well that went out of bounds, but I just don't. I don't know the purpose of that. I really don't, and that's why I said I looked at my colleague Wojo, who's sitting on my right, and I said, to what end? I mean, why do this? And he just shrugged too. So, I think that you can play Dylan McCaffrey and have Shea out on the sideline and getting ready for his next series. But yeah, I wouldn't do this again. If there must be some reason why they wanted to try it, but I don't think there was any real success there.
No, and as you said, if you're going to play Dylan, play Dylan. And I thought he looked pretty good when he was in. I mean, he looks to me like he is more than a capable backup, isn't he?
Oh, yeah. No, I think that they're very solid that way. I mean, we sit there and talk about, Ohio State, how they're going to look. Well, after Justin Fields, I think they are in trouble. But I think Michigan, I don't want to say it's an embarrassment of riches for them in the quarterback's room, but they have capable players. I mean, they have Dylan McCaffrey. They have Joe Milton, who's a very good athlete, but, obviously didn't get to see him. It gets really, important snaps Saturday night. But, I think McCaffrey's I think he's good. He was good last year when he came in. I mean, you got to go back to that Notre Dame game. He looked really smooth in that transition when Shea went out with his legs cramping. So I think it's a very good situation overall, and I think that they're all very much in tune with this offense that Josh Gaddis wants to run.
Well, in the backfield, we're waiting to see who is going to be first to take carries, and it was true freshman Zach Charbonnet. He got the start, and he looked pretty darn good, didn't he?
Oh, he really did, Mike. I really thought on paper coming in, I thought this is going to be the first back since Mike Hart that I think is going to be really the complete product, and from a young age. And he looked like it, and I thought Harbaugh made a great description. He said the stage wasn't too big for him, and he looked like he'd been there before. It's just he looked like a guy who wasn't fazed by the moment, playing under the lights in your first college game, and that bodes well for Michigan and getting Christian Turner in there as well and doing what he did. I mean, Charbonnet had 90 yards, on 8 carries, and Turner had the 49 on 11 carries. So, I mean, I think those are going to be your two go-to guys. But he said Harbaugh and Jay Harbaugh said they had 5 guys, and they wanted to play them all, and they did. But True Wilson, I knew he went in as the number 1 guy, but I think we all knew that was, just on paper. And until these guys, until Christian Turner and Zach Charbonnet, who didn't get to practice in the spring, really got their feet wet and got going in this offense. So I think my biggest takeaway from this game, and we talked about it as we walked out of the stadium, and mine was Zach Charbonnet. I thought he stood out for me watching that game.
And he looked very good to me. I also liked what we got from Christian Turner. He sort of reminds me, Angelique, of a young Karan Higdon, runs low to the ground. The linebackers and defensive secondary have a tough time picking him up. He cuts fast, and he and Charbonnet look like they're going to be a nice change of pacebacks for a defense to have to deal with.
Oh, I think so too. And I've always been one of these, I think you got to ride one back and really, that's your bread and butter. But not in this day and age. And I think that when you have 2 guys like this, it's one game. I know it's one game, but I just thought I saw a lot there from both of them, Mike. And I agree with you. I think this is going to be a nice 1-2 punch for them, a nice change up, as you said. And I think they look better at running back just after this one game than they have in a while. And that's not taking anything away from Karan Higdon, but I just think the upside with Charbonnet and with Turner is just very, very high.
And as far as the receiving core, I know you mentioned that a minute or two ago. It was so good, I thought, to see Tariq Black healthy and looking good. Bellamy looks very fast in the slot. He's got to work on hanging on to some of those passes. I think he had three drops wide open on Saturday night. So much potential in that group, isn't there?
Oh, there is. And Nico Collins had one ball that I thought he should have had. He didn't hang on to, which is unusual, but for Nico Collins. But yeah, I mean, and when you think that Peoples-Jones was on the sideline, and I mean, I've been really curious to see what Peoples-Jones is going to do in this offense, and was disappointed to see him unable to play last night. But yeah, I mean, when you've got Tariq Black and having that first half he had, and looking like he was the same guy in 2017 who opened the season against Florida, and with such nice numbers and a touchdown, very good to see him. And they got Cornelius Johnson in there. They got Ronnie Bell in there, as you mentioned. And, then they got the tight end some play. So I thought Sean McCune made some really nice pickups in his 2 catches. And, I think it's a really good group, and they spread the ball around effectively. But having Tariq Black and then Peoples-Jones and Nico Collins, I think they are going to be as good as advertised. I know that's what Harbaugh's used to describe Dax Hill, but I think it's fair to say that about the receivers.
No, I agree. And what I liked about it also is when you think RPO, you don't think tight ends. And both of the guys look solid on Saturday night. It's nice to see Gaddis has plans for the big guys in this offense, isn't it?
Big speed and space, right, Mike? I mean, the tight ends at Alabama saw they got some pretty serious yards last year. I mean, all the receivers did. And I keep saying again, I know it's not Alabama and don't expect the numbers to be the same, but when you got a quarterback in Shea Patterson who knows how to run the offense and clearly needs to make, he needs to correct the mistakes he made, but the potential's there. And again, I'm not saying they're going to have that explosive an offense, but when you've got that kind of talent, and I know we're assuming that Peoples-Jones is going to be that guy. I think we have reason to believe that. Then, I think as Shea said, sky's the limit. So bring on Army, and that game at Wisconsin and a few weeks after that is going to be really interesting and telling, I think, going forward in the Big Ten.
Well, on that offensive line, Runyon Jr. missed the game on Saturday night, so Ryan Hayes moved over in his place. Jalen Mayfield, of course, had his first start. Your thoughts on how the offensive line play was?
I thought it was good. I mean, and I watched them. I watched the tackles, and it's pretty tough to put 2 first-time players. Have not never had a college start, to put them in there and to do what they did. And again, they were playing a Middle Tennessee State defense that was very undersized, and that was a good thing. And if you were going to have John Runyon out, this was probably the game to have it. And Runyon went through warm-ups. I mean, I think that they were just checking to make sure he couldn't do it. And I think that they wanted to hold him back, and they didn't feel like they needed him for this game, so have him ready for Army next week. But Hayes is backing up both of the tackles, and I thought Mayfield looked good. I mean, it was close. The Mayfield-Stuber battle was close, and I thought it was interesting that Ed Warner, the offensive line coach, said that both of them would have played. I mean, you don't see rotating linemen, but he said the starter would have gotten about 60% of the snaps, and the backup, obviously, 40%. So it was that close between the two. He wouldn't say who was ahead, and I guess it was that close, coin flip. But I thought Hayes acquitted himself well. But you need Runyon in there at left tackle. It's important. You got to have that protection on the left side. And I know it's not a drop back pro style, but you still need your blind side, your quarterback's blind side protected. And he's he's an all Big Ten first team guy, and you need him back.
With us on our game day segment, as we look back at the opener with Middle Tennessee State, and in a few minutes ahead to this weekend's game with Army, is Angelique Chengelis from the Detroit News. Angelique, I thought the D looked pretty darn good considering how much they've lost in the offseason. They gave up a couple of short field scores after turnovers, and that's going to happen. But overall, I thought they looked pretty good.
I thought they did too. And then that's the thing. You can look at the points, and they gave up, the 21. But as you said, the first 2 scores were short field and off of turnovers, and that was, it is tough for any defense. But I thought for sure, I think Aiden Hutchinson looks like the real deal. I thought Mike Dana was really impressive. I enjoyed watching him, the Central Michigan grad transfer, and that was a good move. They needed some more depth at defensive end, and it was a very smart move to go out and get him. But I thought generally, yeah. I mean, and you look at Ambry Thomas. We haven't even talked about him. I mean, a few weeks ago, who knew what was going to happen with him with colitis, and he lost all this weight, gained weight. When was he going to be back? And he gets a pick, he gets a fumble recovery. And the linebackers, I didn't notice them. I wonder. I think that's because we noticed Devin Bush so much last year, and everything he could do, and so that's not a bad thing. I mean, but you don't have a guy like Devin Bush out there, and I think that's what people need to get over is you're not going to have that guy out there, but you're going to have some pretty good players. I mean, Khaleke Hudson looks pretty good. I thought Josh Ross played well, and then Jordan Glasgow. People were puzzled why Harbaugh took him to Chicago for the Big Ten Media Days, and he's just a tough, all accounts, the hardest worker on the team. And that second sack, I mean, that was pure determination on Glasgow's part, and he just did not give up until he got it. And but I mean, I think just across the board, they looked fine. I mean, I don't want to say, oh, you're not going to miss Winovich or Gary or David Long, but I think at some point, they're gonna move past that sentiment, and you might still miss Devin Bush, but I think generally, overall, it was a nice game for them.
No, I think so. And you mentioned Ambry Thomas. I was really surprised when I saw him out on the field and in warm-ups. I thought, well, he's dressed, but then he played so well. I mean, I watched him, and he was tight in coverage. Of course, he had the fumble, the pick.
Yes.
With him back, all of a sudden, that secondary is so much better, isn't it?
It really is. And I mean, and I thought Vincent Gray played really well, too,
yeah.
And they've been talking him up. I think that they've got some nice pieces, and but yeah, I was surprised too, to be honest, Mike. I thought, oh my gosh, colitis, you lose all this weight, it's got such a toll on your body. But clearly, he worked hard to get back, and he said he was lacking confidence going into the game. So what better way to get that back than to have the kind of game he did? And he also had a tackle for loss too, with 2 tackles. So I mean, all in all, a really, really fine game by Ambry Thomas. But yeah, I agree. Having him back there, you got Levert, and Levert struggled. I mean, and he had the special teams fumble, and he had that pick 6 that everybody in the stadium I thought he had.
Yeah.
And because it was wide open, and you and I could have run in for that one, but. I mean, it's going to be quite a duo, but it was impressive to see Ambry Thomas back for sure.
I think we all feel better seeing him back in the lineup. And, one of the other looks from Don Brown's defense I found interesting, though, was him using 4 defensive ends at the same time. And that's something you don't see too often anywhere.
No, you're right. I mean, I don't think that's one of the tweaks that Don Brown was talking about in the offseason. I think everybody was focused on that Ohio State game and how they're going to defend against that type of offense. But no, I mean, he's all about getting the best guys in the right situations, and that was interesting. And is that something he's going to use more often? Maybe. But as long as they really want to get after, they want to get after the quarterback, and I think that was a I don't want to say a lineup. I guess I could say a lineup that could do that. And but I think they're going to try a bunch of different combinations, because I think that they have a lot of bodies, and I don't think that they know the potential of every one of these guys, Mike. But I think that they're going to figure it out pretty fast once they get into game speed and get another game under the belt against Army and see how that bodes for them.
I know it's only one game that we've seen this defense so far with a lot of new pieces, but would you say overall better or worse than you expected?
Yeah, no, I actually didn't think there was going to be a huge drop-off. I really didn't, and it wasn't because I was buying into them. Sometimes I think that we sit there and focus on big name guys and the Rashans and the Chase Winoviches, et cetera, and sometimes I think, well, maybe those guys, they didn't get the chance. They were a little overshadowed, but a lot of those guys got playing time last year. And valuable playing time, and I think some of these guys are really quite talented, and I think everybody knew Kwity Paye, what he was capable of doing. So the only place I thought there would be a drop off was just the production from Devin Bush, that what he gave them. And not saying that Josh Ross can't play that position well. I'm not saying that at all. I just think that Devin Bush added so much, and they're going to miss that. But generally, no, I really did not think there'd be a drop off. I really thought they'd pick up, not pick up where they left off. Just I didn't think that they would take a big step back.
Well, on the special teams front, I thought overall special teams play was pretty darn good. I mean, other than a muffed punt, you hate to see that, but that does happen in openers. But I thought punt and kick return was okay. Coverage on kickoffs and punts was excellent, and Hart and Moody. They were just so good, weren't they?
Yeah, I mean, and then Quinn gets on there, 6 extra points. I mean, it was, I'm going to be curious to see how they're going to keep doing that. Is Nordine going to get in there and kick some field goals? I mean, I still think he's extremely talented. And again, it's one game. You don't know how all of this plays out going forward. But yeah, no, I thought special teams were extremely sound. And that was something Chris Partridge said last week heading into the game, that they had really worked on it, that they knew they had things they had to shore up on protection and everything. And yes, the buff punt was definitely a flaw and a huge error, but I would say, and then, don't forget, you're going to get Peoples-Jones back, and he'll be back there doing what he does in the punt return. So I thought overall it was a very good showing.
And isn't he amazing? I mean, he might be the best I've seen or we've seen in a long time at placing that ball inside the 10 or inside the 5 and really helping his defense out. He is just excellent at that.
I used to, during the Zoltan Mesko era, people don't, I think they know how important punter is, but sometimes they forget how really important it is to have someone like that. And, he was the Big Ten punter of the year last year, and we talked to him last week, and I think everybody just looks at distance, oh, how far is this guy punting? What's that? Oh, yeah, it's pretty good. But it's not about that. It's exactly what you said, Mike. It's about placement and putting them in the position where they can pin the ball. I mean, if you have good hang time, getting your guys down there to stop the ball at the 3-yard line, the 5-yard, the 1-yard line, whatever it is. And Moody's really proficient. And I keep saying Moody's, pardon me, Will Howard is very proficient at that. And he is an enormous weapon for them.
Oh, absolutely he is. We'll never know what Jim says to his team or staff behind closed doors, but at that post-game press conference, he seemed pretty mellow, didn't he?
I thought so, too. I thought even borderline upbeat. And, I don't know. Sometimes I'm a little shocked that, people are like, oh, well, what do you think he's going to be like when he comes in? And I just shrug. I'm like that emoji on the phone, the shrug emoji. I don't know. It's hard to tell what Jim Harbaugh's moods are going to be from minute to minute. But, yeah, I think he was encouraged. I think he knows their mistakes, but he liked that they were able to not unload the playbook, but show a lot and do a lot of things and get a lot of players out there. So I think he liked that they did that. They had some mistakes. He acknowledged them and knows that they're going to get better, but I think he likes the starting point for this offense and definitely sees the upside and knows that he's going to get Peoples-Jones back. And, now it's a matter of making sure that Shea's okay. And I know people probably think, oh, well, Dylan's the better quarterback, just get him in there. But I still think Shea's your guy who started last year. He started 10 games in this offense at Ole Miss, and he's your guy. So it's a matter of making sure that whatever it was that they were checking on at halftime that maybe hampered him a little bit is gets taken care of this week heading into this one.
Well, next up is Army, and I think the best part of that is it's a noon game. At least that's what I think.
I'm with you.
But they struggled against Rice in their opener. It was really a low-scoring affair, 14-7. Wasn't decided until the 3:29 mark of the fourth quarter. Oddly enough, they won it on a pass play, and they only threw 8 passes in the game. And they ran for just under 200 yards. It was not a great offensive performance from Army, but at any rate, they're still going to bring that triple option offense in here. Don Brown's been worrying about it since January 2nd, so that is a challenge. It doesn't matter. Guys just don't see that kind of an offense, so that's going to be interesting and difficult to stop.
Don Brown worries a lot, doesn't he? He's always got nightmares. He can't sleep. He wakes up thinking about games, but yeah, I mean, this is these service academy games are always tough. I mean, I remember when they were playing Air Force, they went to Rome, and he said I was joking. I said, were you watching film? He goes, and his wife said he had his laptop out the entire flight and was just watching, and studying. And but yeah, no, this is. I was surprised too by the output from Army, but again, I chalk it up to a first game situation, perhaps. I mean, we've seen what they've been doing this past couple of years, and know what they're capable of, and then they'll go for it on fourth down. I mean, this is going to be a team that's going to test this defense, and you can say, oh well, it doesn't matter, they're not going to see this again, but it's still about just your defense being able to hold any kind of offense that's thrown at them, and I would imagine that Army's going to be a little more proficient than they were in this opener. and Rice was not a very good team. I mean, they'd won only 2 games last year.
Yeah.
So you wonder what that says about Army, but I don't think you read too much into it. And I think that Michigan will be pretty big favorites going into it, and I think rightfully so. But again, it doesn't take away from Don Brown's sleeplessness in getting his defense ready for this.
No, and I mean, I haven't seen a point spread on this game yet, and that doesn't really matter too much to me these days.
No, it doesn't.
I'm sure Michigan will be favored in double digits, and the question is going to be, can you slow down that option? But you have to think if the defense can adjust and slow that option down. Army is very pesky, but they're very undersized on that defense. You would think the offense is going to find a way to put up some points in this one.
You would think, yeah. And I think that this will be the kind of game that Michigan fans are looking for. I think, these are not going to be Yost. It's not going to be point-a-minute offense. It's not going to be like that, but it could be. I mean, they could be scoring a lot. And I think that's what people are expecting to see. And this is the kind of game that they can do this against Army. And look, I think, what Army does offensively, I still do think plays into Michigan's hands defensively. I think that's a strength. It's just a matter of recognizing what they're seeing coming at them, and I think that they'll do that pretty quickly. Maybe initially it'll take some time, but you're right. I mean, I think when you look at this Army defense, I'm not saying Michigan's going to have its way with them, because I thought that they would against Middle Tennessee, and I think that they did for the most part. But yeah, I mean, this is, especially if you get a Peoples-Jones back, I think that's a perfect kind of game to get the rust off for him. And you get, Ronnie Bell, a little more confidence, get him out there a little bit more. So, I think this is going to be another W, and by double digits, probably as the odds makers suggest. So, we'll see. But I think I think we agree that the noon game is a good thing.
I think we all enjoy that. So, yeah, I think it's going to be an interesting game, a very different kind of an offense than we saw, of course, in the opener against Middle Tennessee State. But those service academies, you were right. I remember Bob Ufer always saying when Michigan played Navy or Army that they were the best conditioned teams you were going to see, the most disciplined teams you were going to see in that offense. Yeah, I don't put too much stock in that Rice game either, because that's a very precision offense, that triple option, and it was the first game. So they have to get the kinks out too. So they're a very well coached team. It's not Rice, it's the Big House, it's Michigan. I think they're gonna come in with a better effort on Saturday.
Yeah, Mike, I think people will say, "Oh, that's a cliche," but I do think it's true. I mean, it's the whole Hoosiers thing and getting your team up, and I don't think they're going to take the measuring tape out on the field, but it won't go to that extent. But of course, teams get up to play a game like this, and that's why some teams do have success in these settings. But and I do think you're going to see a better Army team on Saturday, but I think you're also going to see a better Michigan team. And since we're talking cliches, I mean, what's the one that coaches always say? It's how do you improve see your most improvement from your game 1 to game 2? And I think they say it because it's true. I fully expect to see both teams showing some improvement when they play on Saturday.
I agree with that. Our guest today on our game day show, as we've looked back at the big win over Middle Tennessee State on Saturday and ahead a bit to the Army game on Saturday, has been beat writer Angelique Chengelis from the Detroit News. Angelique, always a pleasure to have you on the show, and we look forward to our next visit, hopefully before the Ohio State game, but for certain none, but we hope to get you on in between now and then.
Okay, but just as long as it's not after another night game. I can barely wake up after these games now, Mike. I'm getting really old. I was like, oh, but I will tell you, I mean, it's an hour drive for me to get home. I think I was home by 3:30 in the morning. Couldn't sleep because you're all fired up. Yeah. You've been working, watching football. And so I watched all the highlight shows. Went to bed at 4:30 in the morning. So that's just no fun.
No, it's
so
not.
No more night games.
No. Well, we've got one more that we know, but
yes,
right.
There will be another one.
It's not as easy to recover anymore, but we look forward to our next visit, Angelique.
Thank you, Mike. I really appreciate it.
Quick Hits is next as we wrap it up for another week here on The Michigan Man, and in partnership with SB Nation's Maize and Brew.
On Quick Hits today, here are a few bullet points from Jim's Monday presser. Peoples-Jones, Runyon Jr., and Donovan Jeter have a chance to play this Saturday. Still waiting for news on Michael Dwumfor, who saw limited action on Saturday and was wearing a soft cast.
Jim said upon further review he thought the Josh Gaddis offense was practically flawless for an opener, which made him very happy. He was also very impressed with his running backs, especially true freshman Zach Charbonnet, who he said hits the holes fast and hard and was outstanding in pass protection. He also had very high praise for the play of Christian Turner. Jim said the offensive line graded out very well, especially redshirt freshman Ryan Hayes, who started at left tackle for John Runyon Jr. Jim said he grades out just under Ben Bredesen, and that's exceptional because it was his first start. Jim said he thought Shea Patterson was outstanding, as was Dylan McCaffrey. He said Shea made great reads most of the night, as did Dylan, and Dylan had some nice runs. So he liked what he saw from both of his quarterbacks. Thanks again to Angelique Chengelis for joining us on today's Michigan Game Day segment. She'll be back again later this season. On Thursday, we'll be joined by Army radio play-by-play voice Rich DeMarco. So make sure you come back for that. So thanks again for taking the time to listen. Wherever you get the show, please take a minute or two to comment or rate the program, and we thank you in advance. That will do it for this week's Michigan Game Day edition. I'm your host, Mike Fitzpatrick. Have a great Michigan week, everyone. Until we meet again on Thursday, take care, and as always, go Blue.
Thanks for joining us today on The Michigan Man, here on Wolverine Sports Radio, a member of the V Sporto Network, and in partnership with SB Nation's Maize and Brew. Our listener lines are open 24/7 for your calls at 313-263-4842. That's 313-263-4842. Or email us at themichiganmanpodcast@yahoo.com. That's themichiganmanpodcast@yahoo.com. The Michigan Man Podcast is produced at the studios of Robin Lynn Productions, Allen Park, Michigan, and is not affiliated with the University of Michigan. Go Blue!